hear me yet. Oh, now you're connected. Hey,
There.
hey, Dan.
Fix my camera again. How are you?
Good. Well, thanks for agreeing to do this with me. Hopefully, I won't erase this conversation, and hopefully, I'll do a better interview. I just, how's? Let's see. What is it? This is March 18th to 21. So,
Right.
all right. So here we are. Um, so how's life going?
Things are going good. Things are going good, all things considered. Uh, Things are moving along. I don't know. There's vaccines around now.
Did you get a
I don't
shot
know.
yet?
Not yet. I'm apparently eligible because of the indigenous thing, but it's very difficult to try and actually book an appointment. So I'm having an issue with it.
Because you're a Canadian Indigenous person, or just in general?
Uh, I'll go with what you said because it sounds more controversial.
Sounds more exciting.
Yeah, it's a little more with the time.
Well, I'm a Jewish American, and I haven't got my shot yet. When do I get my shot? I'm supposed to get mine in a couple of weeks, maybe a week, the first one. But apparently, like my partner is trying to do it for me because she's smart and attentive and knows about smart things, and I don't. So she's trying to set me up. But apparently, in order to get a shot down here, you need to have two open dates for the first shot and then the second shot. So apparently, it's kind of weird or whatever. But yeah, that's pretty exciting. You know that
Yeah, my
maybe.
wife actually just got hers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Does she work with people, or what kind of job does she have?
Yeah, so she falls kind of under the support worker category. She's a psychotherapist.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, she got her work cut out for her at home, and then she,
Get, then she gets paid for it.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a few questions to start off and see how it kind of goes. But you're primarily known to me, at least, and to, I'm sure, some of the people that will be watching or listening, as one of the two, now three members of the band Indian Handcrafts. Can you talk a little bit about Indian Handcrafts before we get into actually talking about your new upcoming recording that you're finishing and the two records you had out before that? Can you talk a little bit about how Indian Handcrafts formed? Because it's been a while now, and
Mm-hmm.
I met you for the first time when you came down to see Corrosion of Conformity, and that was like 10 years ago now, 8 years. It was a long time
Yeah,
ago.
that
Yeah,
was a really long time ago.
we came to your hometown, and you came up to me and introduced yourself, and I already think I knew the name of your band and knew that you were going to record with Tosh, and I think it was through probably Tosh himself. So maybe that was getting ready to happen. But can you give us and all the billions of viewers that will be turning in a little history of how your band came to be?
Yeah, so Brandon and I, we're the two original guys. Brandon and I played previously in a band called Foxjaws. Foxjaws was a band for about 5 years. We did like just some minor touring, put out a couple albums and stuff like that. Lots of, a few changes in the lineup over the years and, everything, typical band stuff. And then that was kind of starting to slowly unravel. And Brandon and myself, I had another project going where I was trying to score the movie Frankenstein. Brandon was also involved in that, and he took his drum kit and he really scaled it down. So he had like a really, really minor kit, like just the kick, a snare, and a floor tom, a ride, and a hat. And
Yeah.
then I decided, okay, well, I'll try and cover the other end of the spectrum. And I started messing around with a POG and splitting my signal. We realized we were like, hey, the other band's kind of on the way out. Why don't we do this? It's fun. There's other bands that are doing this and can pull it off successfully. We took a lot of cues from Big Business, Lightning Bolt, No Age, bands like that. And yeah, I don't know, that we just decided to just try and have at it on our own, and everything just kind of happenstance fell into place. We played some gigs in the city. We caught the attention of somebody who used to work, I believe it was Atlantic, and she'd been out of the game for a while, but she came in and offered to kind of help manage us. And then we had another guy who was kind of co-managing from a band up here that does pretty well, named Billy Talent. He started helping us out as well, getting us gigs, hooked us up with an agent and everything else. She shopped the video around that a friend of ours, Brad Conrad, did in our old jam space for Red Action. It's on YouTube somewhere. We're much younger then. And she shopped it around. It caught the attention of Kathy down at Sargent House. She booked us a flight to go down and meet her. And she wanted to sign us and introduce us to Toshi. And that was where it all really started to take off.
The rest is history. What was the band that you guys were in previously to Indian Handcrafts? Like what kind of universe was that band in? What style of music was the previous band like?
So the previous band could have been, more indie rock, if you will. When we started out, the first thing that we recorded was really influenced by, at least from my standpoint, a lot of more of the post-punk stuff. That was the first thing we recorded. It was more listening to a lot of Joy Division and, Gang of Four, stuff like that. It's like dissonant kind of, chords and kind of angular. And then it kind of streamlined into more of a songwriting thing. Brandon's sister got into the band with us as well. And then we kind of got more washy sounding. And we were kind of pulling from influences all over the place by the time we got into our second album. And then by the time the third album hit, creatively, it kind of started to sound more like a mixtape. Like some people were really still into the singer-songwriter stuff and wanted to move in that direction. I wanted to go a little more heavy. It's, typical stuff that I suppose happens in most bands, unless it's like people sit down and go, this is what we're doing. I'm the guy. That's it. Some bands do that. We didn't really do that. So it kind of went all over the map a little bit towards the end. And then, but Brandon and I both, had an affinity for heavier stuff. And we decided, let's move in that direction.
Right. And you also had a couple of things that kind of made you stand out a little bit, because you mentioned some of the bands that you were influenced by, like Big Business and stuff, and how they were mostly a duo, but for a brief time they were a trio. So I think what caught my ear was obviously initially the fact that there was two people, but also he had just the super small stripped down drum set, but he had like, I think he had like a rack tom, a four tom in place of where the rack tom was, and like a hi-hat and two cymbals. And that was kind of it. So I was like, well, that's kind of cool, because sometimes if you just take one thing away and move something, it might make you play differently or approach it differently. But then the other thing was you split your signal into a guitar amp and a bass amp. And this is really funny because I'm talking to a friend of mine, and we're gonna, when things get better and like things get safer, we're gonna try to play and stuff. And he has this of doing what you did, because he was in a bunch of bands and he thought, well, maybe we don't need a bass player, or at least for now, maybe I can just split the signal. And he knows about you guys and stuff like that. So it's kind of funny that was the other thing that really kind of stood out, is just the sound you got for splitting the signal. But you also told me the last time I talked to you that you're not doing that anymore because you kind of felt limited. Can you talk a little bit about how that came about, and then why you eventually decided you didn't want to do that anymore, and which brings in your actual third member, your actual bass player, Leland?
Yeah.
So
so as far as the tone itself, Well, again, the reasoning was just because we thought, let's just do it, the two of us. Sorry, wait, I kind of missed on what the question was. Well, again,
no. Well, I just kind of brought up the fact that the sound you got splitting your guitar between a bass, I guess a guitar amp and a bass amp. Is that what that is? I don't even know.
yeah, 100%.
That kind of made you guys kind of stand out, but you said that eventually you got tired of that or felt limited to that.
Yeah.
What were some of the good things about doing it like that? Why did you do it like that? And why did you eventually decide we just need to get another friend in here so I can not do this anymore? What was going on?
So, I mean, the reason for doing it, obviously, just ease of use. It was just the two of us. We had been in a band that had up to 6 people at one point, and it was just like, we can keep this really simple if it's just the two of us. We get along. We never had any issues in the previous band or anything. So, like, Brandon and I have been playing together for like 15 years now. But so that was, the reason for doing it that way in the beginning. And then there was something exciting about it because, we were listening to a lot of riff orientated rock. And then we started realizing there were certain songs we could cover. Now, one of the problems with splitting your signal is what I would do is I would come in my tuner, I'd run a little pitch shifter or something like that ahead of that. And then what I would do is I would run a POG. And then my POG is basically, that's the octave generator. And what I would do is I would take the dry signal and then run that through, it would go through how would I run it? My board's set up differently. So after the dry signal, so that's not affected with the bass signal, I would run into a distortion pedal. At that point, I would run into a delay pedal, a looper, and a reverb pedal. And that goes to the Marshall, the guitar cab, and everything else. And that's where all the midtones coming from. The the octave generated sound would go into its own distortion, its own delay pedal, and then I would send that off to a bass amp. So I would have a really big boomy guitar tone with the octave off, but I tried to have it set so that as soon as I punched it on, it would just push out a ton of low end, from the other side of the stage. So there's power chords you can get away with, but only up to a certain point. Once you start getting down too low, it starts to become mush. The other problem is if you're playing chords, you can do it when it's off, but if you're playing chords like a G chord or something like that, and the octave is on, it just sounds, again, like mush. So,
right. So you just
we were limited.
Yeah, you reached the natural end of what made that exciting, and it was time to move on to do something else.
Exactly. Yeah, I wanted to open it back up again to playing more than 3-4 strings at a time.
It worked for Helmet.
Yeah, hey, why not? I don't know.
What?
And I'm not ruling it out. Like, it's something like if we ever got to a place where we're touring, I'd still like to be able to have the option to do that. So say in a section of a song, if I really wanted to boom things up, that's available to me. Right. But for right now, I've just been kind of keeping it pretty standard, and it's less shit to carry.
Yeah. Do you know of any other people that have tried to do that trick? Because other than me talking to you about you doing that, and then my friend talking about that, now it's like, oh, now I have a reference of somebody that actually does that. Have you seen other people done that?
Yeah,
stuff?
I've got a buddy who's in an awesome band. He's actually in another band that we formed during the pandemic here, but he's in another band called Crass, and he does the same thing but backwards. So he plays bass, right? But then he runs his signal opposite, and then he'll get basically guitar tone, and then kick his other amp on, and then the low end comes. He's got the same issues as I do. He's obviously not playing any chords or anything, but if you're just playing riffs and grooves, you're fine.
Right. And maybe also slower music that has more chance to breathe. Maybe it would lend itself to, if all your songs were like 10-minute long slow songs, I guess.
Like Electric Wizard.
So Sergeant House, that was a 2-record sort of thing, and
yep.
I guess, well, from talking to you last time, you're getting ready to finish a record. the third one. No, fourth.
That's
one.
right. Yeah, so we self-released something before Sargent House.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we did the two with her, with Sargent House. Then we did an EP after Sargent House, which was the first thing we did with Leland. It was just like a cassette thing that we did. It was just one long 14-minute song with many parts. And then and then now we're working. Toshi actually just sent mixes on Monday for us to listen to for the new stuff. So that's getting closer, which is awesome.
Wow. And you did some degree of touring during that era, and you actually made it down to Raleigh, North Carolina. And of course, I timed it great and missed you guys. And that was your tour of the States. And was that like your first time down here?
Yeah, that was our first tour. Well, we were actually supposed to go prior to that tour. Red Fang had a tour previous to that one that we were supposed to be on. It was one of those situations where it was like, hey, when you get to the border, just tell them you're doing this. It'll be good. So we went down and, we said, hey, we're here to help out, with some floods or something. I don't remember what the excuse was, but they just went no and then go home.
Did it sound kind of fishy the way, like, not completely set up, or did you have your doubts?
Yeah, I just definitely, like, I think we knew, and it probably read on our faces, that we had no business going into the States at all. You know what I mean? Like, we're clearly not here for the purposes that we are saying we are. What's in the van kind of deal, and we got rerouted and we ended up going home.
You guys seem like you're bad liars, and I'm
terrible liars.
Yeah.
It's all over the face.
Yeah. So what were your impressions of I think when I talked to you last time, you said that you were kind of nervous about touring in super hot desert weather because you thought the tires were going to melt. Did I get that right, or am I just?
Yeah. That's
sound more dramatic.
Yeah, well, no, that's definitely our version of freezing to death. This complete opposite. We met up with Justin, who was the tour manager at the time for Sargent House. We met up with him. We flew down. He picked us up at the airport. First show was in San Francisco. We did the rounds there, and then we started heading out like Tempe, Arizona, and cutting across that way. And yeah, that was the first time ever being in the desert. So while part of it is like, wow, this is amazing. Like, I never thought I'd see anything like this to, somebody from Canada. You do start getting a little freaked out. Like, well, what if we broke down, or like, how hot are these roads? Like, are the tires going to be able to withstand the heat? Like, are we going to get stuck out here? Are there scorpions? Like, you don't know.
Giant killer scorpions are gonna like come out and attack your vehicle, and probably claws to like chomp into your tires that are already half melted and things like that. It could happen.
Yeah. It could be that.
It could happen. I don't know.
Yeah. Anything can happen.
Right. So you did that little tour, and then also you guys aren't really in. You care deeply about playing music and expressing yourself, but both of you have had children and families for the entire time. So I think when I talked to you, you said, well, the idea of doing a bunch of touring is really appealing, but the reality of the situation is that, we have jobs and families, and what, the way things are, we just can't disappear and leave those responsibilities for like a month or two and not get compensated in a realistic way for the sacrifice that you're going to make. Did you guys know going into playing the band that this is for fun and we'll do what we can, but I don't know of trying to like tour and open up for somebody and just not quite have it effective, I guess, would be maybe a good way of putting it. Did you guys know going into it that, well, we'll see what happens, but we can't just try to do all this stuff. You know, we're not 18 years old or whatever.
I think going into it, you know, we're definitely obviously green to the situation. We'd been out and done shows for a week here and there before in a previous band. But the idea of going out for many weeks was still really new to us. You know, Brandon at that time, I don't know if he had it. I'm not sure if he had his first baby at that point. But I had already had 2 children at that time. And so, I mean, it was stressful, you know what I mean? Because there's a lot of stigma with being in a band and going out on the road, and, you know, a lot of people really can get in your ear, you know, he's not going to be around and yada, 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 you know, and I think that can affect things. I mean, I know to some degree it affected things for me personally, being out. But, you know, my take was more, well, let's roll with the punches and see what happens, because, I mean, who knows? I don't want to blow the opportunity, you know, and not do it, you know, and then regret it forever. You know,
Sure.
because we're in a situation like we're on a label with other bands that we like, you know, we're mingling with people like Toshi and, you know, crossing paths with whoever, you know what I mean? It was a really good situation. So for me, it was like a dream come true in a lot of ways. But at the same time, it was really hard to be out because it was to some degree, or at least maybe, you know, contributing to kind of tearing the family dynamic apart that I had at the time, you know, and all that stuff did suffer as a result. You know, in hindsight, you know, everything worked out, and, you know, I've got happy kids, and, you know, my ex is happy and I'm happy, and, you know, everything else. So, I mean, it worked out, but, you know, it was hard for that first tour, to try and get that going. I'm not 100%. I can't really speak for Brandon and what his situation was, but I know it probably wasn't easy for him either. But yeah, you know, like we gave her our all. And then when it came back up again the second time, I was already separated. So, and I had sold the house that we lived at and everything else. So I had some money backing me up. So for me, it wasn't a big deal to go out again. You know, I'd already kind of worked through that stuff. So, but for Brandon, he had his, you know, his baby at that point. So he was feeling the same thing that I was previous to that. I'm assuming.
Sure.
I don't know like what the dynamic was, but I mean, you know, his wife, you know, very supportive, and, you know, so he was lucky that way. And yeah, I don't know. So
Yeah,
it was tough, but we tried.
you're asking a lot of people to, you know, like a lot of a partner or a wife to be supportive, even if it means being away for that long, and you have fucking children. You know, it's you know, for me, it's like I really still love music as much as I ever have, and I enjoy playing drums. And there's a part of me that, you know, the fantasy is, well, I want to, you know, I'm not somebody that practices by myself. I'm not that kind of a drummer. Like, I've set up my drum kit. I think I told you last time, yeah, I'm going to be playing. Well, it's set up partially, and I haven't touched it. I have not, because I forgot. The main thing is like, I'm just into the idea of finding somebody I can play with and have fun with, and I'm not really interested in trying to. I mean, I think it's different for drumming than guitar playing, obviously, but like sitting around and practicing paradiddles or whatever, you know, like you can't write songs on drums. You can write drum parts, but anyway. So the idea of playing is really appealing, even at this point. But it's like, I really don't have the time. You know, that's the thing. And also, it's like there's a bunch of things about being in a band. Like Indian Handcrafts have done a million times more things than most of the bands I've ever been in. You know, as far as having records out, being able to go and do some kind of touring, whatever, and that's all really very exciting. But the stuff that a lot of the stuff I did. I'm just not crazy about the idea of being at my age and setting up a bunch of stuff and playing for 5 people and any project, like, and you know, after like I'm just kind of gun shy about that. But if you get me behind, if this new situation works out, I'll be really excited to play. I just don't want to. I don't want to do some of the stuff I did before. Like I just don't want to go somewhere unless there's some idea that somebody actually cares and wants to see it play. I don't know how bands even like get popular these days, and I'm totally out of the loop. I guess but so I'm always torn between the reality of the situation, which is not so much that I'm old, but like starting over again, and then like I just don't know if I can like if my ego can handle playing to 3 people, well-meaning people, and that kind of thing. And
Right.
I've always had that kind of struggle, but it's probably going to happen because every time I've ever said it doesn't, it does. So
Yeah.
but I just, I mean, that's probably why I should have learned how to play guitar years ago, like you or any other guitar player. You can write songs on guitar, but you can't really write songs on drums, which is why so many drummers end up being songwriters. Because it's like, man, how good do I have to be just to play a beat? Well, you gotta be good, but that kind of thing. But you also seem like you just like to do it, and that you're going to do it, and that's pretty much it. You're not really worried about fame or whatever. This is just one of the many things that you like to do, and this is what you're doing. And that's your motivation more than superstardom or something like that.
Well, yeah, it's. I think lately it's more. I find other people influential. People like that work hard. Like people who really work hard at it. That's to me, that's the success. You know what I mean? So dudes like Melvin's, Toshi is an extremely hard worker. People like that. That's kind of what inspires me to want to be better. And then as far as from my own perspective, I don't know. I mean, I don't really ever feel like I'm done figuring out what my voice actually is in any way. And it's always changing. So I think I'm always going to be chasing it, trying to figure out what it is this time.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. And you have not just this upcoming record that you're finishing or Tosh is finishing mixing, but you have a few other projects, and this would be a good opportunity for you to talk about those and plug them.
Oh, plug away.
Plug away.
Well, yeah. What do we got? So during the pandemic, I hooked up with a couple guys. We just self-released an EP. The project's name is Grail. And it's that guy from Cross Dog, who was the bass player I was telling you about. He's got a similar setup to me. And we just linked up with this guy who's a songwriter, and basically he just sent riffs out to a drummer. He drums, we sent them back to him, bass parts back to the guy, over to me. I just sing on that. So yeah, we just put that out a couple of weeks ago. It's doing okay so far as just being a new thing that no one's ever heard before. And then I got a solo thing that I'm rapping right now under the moniker Colonizer. It's just Bandcamp stuff. But I'm rapping a solo album now, which is a little bit more of a mixed bag of other stuff, kind of pulls into electronic and stuff like that. And then I've got 2 other projects aside from that. And I'm drumming on a punk album for a friend. One's a cinema thing, and the other's back to the post-punk stuff.
Wow, you sound like you're very busy.
Yeah, I think that's how I with my stress is I just make myself busier.
Yeah. Are you the kind of person where if you take a second to not do something that you feel like there's something wrong and you got to just keep doing it? Or do you have to like remind yourself to stop so you can relax?
It's not so much like I always have things on the go or little creative endeavors, but I have this weird tick that I've developed where I feel like if I'm not doing something and I have the time to do it, then I'm wasting my time. I don't know where that came from, but literally my wife will be like, oh, I'm tired, I'm going to go to bed. And then I'll think, oh, you know what? I've got probably a half hour, maybe an hour before I'm should be going to bed, before I'm like legit tired. So I should
Yeah.
go downstairs and work on photos or, for a project or something, like I might as well. I'm awake.
That's exactly it. That's the way I relax. But the thing is, it's like I operate like everything's going to go into the toilet in like, a really short amount of time, which is not a really, like I've done all this artwork stuff and I keep just cranking it out and people will say, oh yeah, you're sure crank it out. And it's like, really? And then a part of me thinks I'm not doing enough. Like I never feel like I'm doing enough, which is crazy. Yeah. Totally crazy. Like, and then I'm going to, in the future add a little bit of music in a almost post-pandemic situation. I don't know. I always feel like I don't want to waste my time. And maybe part of that has to do with like, you said that you're about 50.
I'm going to be, what am I turning? 45 this year.
Okay. Well, so you're younger than me, but still, age is a concept I just can't measure anymore, Yep. So it's kind of like when people mark time, like, when you go online and say this record came out 45 years ago, it's like, man, I don't need to hear that. I remember buying, I don't need to hear that,
Yeah.
But that's just kind of how I always feel like. I just feel like maybe because of getting older, you realize that you don't have your whole life staring ahead of you. So like wasting time when you get older is an abomination.
Really frustrating.
Abomination of an idea.
Yeah, whether it's blaring the horn at somebody at a light who's not turning when they're supposed to, or getting out to shovel the driveway before you go to work. I always joke around with my neighbor. He's like, "You're so busy," and it's just like I realize I'm probably the guy who's gonna have a heart attack shoveling his driveway. I'm that guy. You know what I mean?
Well,
you think about this busy thing and working hard. I always think it was like Dwayne Johnson. I think he's up at like 4 a.m. I don't understand. Like, you think that you're busy and then you go, holy
wow. Now I don't, because for whatever reason, I'm thinking Dwayne is like the guitar player for Elton John band, but I know that's Davey Johnston. Who's?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Who's Dwayne? It's like, why is a guitar player for Elton John up at 4 a.m? Are you learning? Like, you should know these songs. But I don't know who that is, or maybe I'm just drawing a blank.
All the kids' movies there, The Rock.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah, that dude.
Okay, so what did he say? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm just saying, like guys like that, they're up at like 4:30 a.m. So whenever I think, oh yeah, oh, I'm really, really busy, really, really busy. You think back to guys like that, you're like, they're up at 4 a.m. getting stuff done before you're out of bed. How busy are they?
Yeah. What about like things like, are you a social person? Do you have like a big booming social life?
I'm definitely a friends orientated person for sure. But it's usually for playing music. So all my friends are generally musicians. So we'll get together, learn a bunch of covers, do stuff like that. That's more my social thing. I've made that as well. I don't really go out to bars just to go out or stuff like that. I've never really been a big person that way. I like playing, but I'm not a big club person or anything. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't stand that stuff. Well, let me round this up by asking you a few other music questions about the stuff that came my way when we would talk online a little bit. We talked a little bit about Crass.
Yeah.
And, what do you like about them, and when was your entry point for that? And we've talked about our mutual respect of the band Crass. How did you get into that kind of stuff? 'Cause that's definitely off center with some of the other things we've talked about, for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. So my introduction to them was not that long ago. It was probably 5-6 years ago. Now,
Yeah.
I'd heard of them, but I'd never really listened to them before. And I was listening to a podcast, and the intro song they used particularly, or on the particular day, was the song "White Punks on Hope."
Yeah.
And I heard it, and I was like, oh, "What's this? This is really interesting." And I liked the delivery, I liked the production, I liked everything about it. And I was like, "Oh, I got to look more into this." So I looked up the lyrics, and I was like, "Well, this is interesting." Guys definitely got a certain view of how things are played, in the system, and I found it really eye-opening to a degree. And just like it was kind of speaking to a lot of the things that I thought.
Yeah.
So after that, I started digging, and then I got Feeding the 5,000 and Price the album, and then and then I heard Penis Envy and all these albums, and I was just like, how are these guys not so much more popular? Especially considering today's climate, you'd think there would be a huge resurgence of that.
Well, I think I can answer that question by also adding, like they were around when I was a kid getting into punk rock and everything. And I always kind of respected them and thought that everything about them was cool. Their logo is next to the Black Flag bars. That's like the best logo in punk, for sure.
Yeah, I had it here, but I don't know where it went. Oh, here.
Yeah. So, an amazing design. But I was always more like, I didn't really hear that much of them at that point. So I thought it was like this tinny kind of shrill,
Mm-hmm.
and I think early on I was like, well, I would just rather just read the lyric sheet and what they have to say than listen to the music. But that was kind of a serious miscalculation. But anyway, to answer your question, the reason why people aren't, I think they're huge as far as their influence goes, but I think the reason why maybe they're not bigger is because they seem to represent, and this has nothing to do with the band, but they represent this uniform and this, I'm not even saying that it's bad to have a uniform, but that clad punk rocker, drunk kind of sort of thing, you know what I mean? Like there's like a uniform that goes with liking Crass, or kind of similar to how there's a uniform in liking crossover speed metal, and you got to wear a bullet belt. You see like young kids that are into things like what's that band they all look like they came from an Anthrax video in the mid 80s? They're enormous, and they're nice guys too. They're like they're like a cartoony crossover Municipal Waste.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, like there's obviously a fashion in that style of music too. I think the fashion and the appearance of what you're supposed to look like, that might be the answer to why maybe more people don't know about them outside of us talking about them, and they've had a global impact. But I think the punk rock stuff might give people this false impression of the ideas. I'm not even saying that I agree with all their ideas, but I like
for sure.
Yeah, but I like the conviction. I actually think I like Penis Envy the best.
Right.
Which is the one record that Steve Ignorant doesn't sing on.
Yeah, that's right.
I think I like all, and I think also just musically, yeah, but I wasn't into that stuff when I was younger, and I'm sort of in the same boat that you're in. It was about 5 or 6 years ago when I just kind of realized I really like this, and that one band, that duo from England, Sleaford Mods, that people really love a lot. And they're pretty interesting. They directly, I read a few interviews with them, and they're totally into like Crass, and they're friends with Steve Ignorant and stuff like that.
No way. That makes 100% sense.
Yeah, it kind of does, because there's something kind of similar to that, And then there's other people I've talked to that like the music but don't like the ideas, and some people don't like the music, but I think they're quietly very influential. But yeah, when I was younger, I never would have,
Yeah, there's certain things like that where you hear it when you're young and you're like, this is garbage. And then you come around again later and you're like, how did I miss this?
Oh yeah, that's always what I'm like when I discover or read something. I'm like, what? Where was I? Because
Yeah,
I always think I have to be in on the ground floor of everything
yeah.
for whatever stupid reason. So if I heard something, I'm like, well, where was I? Like I have to
Yeah,
know. You can't possibly know about everything.
that's absolutely true. More of a curator, if you will.
Right. Well, Dan, thanks a lot for giving me 40 minutes of your time. And before I let you go, I want you to, if people are interested in checking out any of your music, whether it's with Indian Handcrafts or not, where do they go on the internet to be introduced to your musical gifts?
So for Indian Handcrafts, just indianhandcrafts.ca. Everything is pretty much there. For the other projects, the solo stuff, Colonizer, it's Colonizer with a Z. That is on Bandcamp, and Grail on Bandcamp as well. And Instagram, whatever.
Cool. Oh, I just thought of a few other questions. It revolves around songs from the first record, which is
Yes.
I think the song is called "Coming Home." Is that like your Soundgarden tribute song?
You know what? It was definitely yeah.
Has anyone has anyone said that to you? Because it sounds, man, this sounds like a great Soundgarden song that Soundgarden never wrote.
It was completely influenced by Big Business, 110%.
Okay, well, I got that wrong.
But I can hear what you're saying. There was a guy who actually did an acoustic cover of it, and when I heard that, I went, "Oh, it's completely a different song."
Yeah, well, it's the musical end of things. I don't know, it just reminded me of that. And then the other song, which is still sort of my favorite song, is that Truck Mouth song,
Yep.
because it's a really hypnotic riff that just goes over and over and builds.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that come from? Is that influenced by anything? Because to me, that sounds just like, this is something else that's kind of weird, but it sounds like this King's X song I really like called Faith, Hope, and Love off of their third record. It sounds not like it, but it just has the same sort of like.
Huh.
Uh,
Yeah, no, that was an attempt to try and play chords, still keeping the pog active. So I could only play the low strings and then the high strings. So when you're listening to it, there's no middle string action happening at all. It's just a break in between. It was the only jam that we had where we could really kind of use anything that sounded somewhat like a chord. That's where it came from. And then the name was just a joke when we were stoned one time. Some friends of mine back in high school, instead of cottonmouth, we said we had truck mouth. I don't know. And then it just stuck with me. So it's just about pasties. I don't know.
20 years later.
Yeah, I don't know. There you go. It's stuck.
And then the last song, my last question, my favorite song off the second record by far is Degenerate Case. I don't understand why Sergeant House didn't pick that song. If they picked that song, we'd be having a totally different conversation. So you can just got back a 6-month Tool tour where you and that riff, that song was so successful that it made the pandemic never happen. That's how powerful it was. Why
that was my favorite.
They didn't pick the right song. Oh,
it happens.
Well, it does happen, and I am going to leave this in there. But what is that song based on? Who were you ripping off or being influenced by for that song?
That one kind of more like, Butthole Surfers feel, Ministry, that kind of just,
really
straight ahead. Yeah, that's kind of more the feel, the little riffs in between, a little thrashy kind of Slayer-ish. And then the end was more of a Dick Dale vibe, the last riff in the song where it ends out. And that's actually my favorite song on the album because that song has my my wife and her band singing the backup vocals at the end of the song, and you hear all the haze. Those are my kids in the basement. We recorded that here in Barrie and then sent that to Toshi. And then there's a little harmonica thing at the end, and that's Brandon's baby. So it's got everybody. That's the family song.
Is there any other songs where you feel like in the history of Indian Handcrafts where you guys got it right? Like, what's your favorite song besides what you're finishing now with the new trio version of the band?
All right. Well, I'm partial to Degenerate Case. Lyrically, Terminal Horse from the first album. And I'm really fond of the Bastard EP we did because we were without a label. And a buddy of ours, Andrew, recorded that here in Barrie. And I don't know. It was just kind of, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out the words. It just felt freeing to do that almost. And it was our first thing with Leland as well. So it was kind of like being a new band again, you know? So I do enjoy that. And I mean, we recorded that, you know, over a weekend, really, really, really late into the evening, and, you know, literally 4 a.m, you know, whatever. And then just making noise and just trying to continue to build a thing. I don't know. I was happy with that.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. I don't know. That's all I can think of right now. I'm sure as soon as we're done talking, I'm gonna go, oh, why did I say this or whatever.
Do you when you guys write lyrics, are you trying to convey something, or is it a mixture? Is there any of you in any of that stuff, or is it just like, well, I need to make up these lyrics and have it complement this music that we're working on, and we'll see how it goes?
There's definitely some references to events or things that have happened. I try to keep them more metaphorical so they're not, you know, I don't want to be like, you know, somebody be like, oh, why did you do that? You know, or why would you, you know? So
it's in the song, dude.
Exactly. I don't like to do that. So I try and keep things metaphorical, but I personally am a big fan right now, and this sounds weird, but I like lyrics that are a little more nonsensical, like where you're kind of doing more stream of conscious kind of writing and then figuring out what the hell you meant.
Sure.
I don't know. That's kind of more, I like that right now. I mean, at least right now, that's more my process now. But, you know, in the past, yeah, I mean, you'd write about something and just cloak it in a bunch of, you know, don't make anything too obvious. A lot of metaphors. Yeah. You know, leave it up to somebody else to figure out what it is. If it's too personal to me, I would rather somebody else figure out what it is, and then they can relate it to themselves the way they want, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I don't want to be an open book.
Yeah, I do have respect for people that can do that. But
oh yeah.
But at the same time, it's, you know, like I used to do a lot of personal cartoons, and luckily I haven't felt the need to do that for like a really long time, and I'm really glad, to be honest. I'm really glad.
Yeah.